Hey there, this is Jaran, facility manager at the Deep Earth Anomaly Department, located on the coastal strip in East Antarctica. I'm signing in for yet another cold shift. So, big news. First things first, obviously, because Jaran, the duplicate, has been pretty busy going through the facility. He's been categorizing possessions left behind by every crew that's ever been here, and none of us really know how many there have been, but given the age of this facility, there must have been quite a few. And most of the things that he found was pretty much rubbish, things that they probably didn't forget but left behind on purpose, you know. He found a gold watch. You know, who follows time back on dry land these days anyway? You know. One thing he came across though was an old book filled with handwritten poems, mostly poems about love and that sort of thing. But we read every single one of them, and just listen to this because this one stood out. It said, okay, sort of prayer, sort of sin, soon the very end begins. Looking out, I see inside, where there is nowhere left to hide. Sort of prayer, sort of sin, I'll sit until the end begins. Now, Jaran, the duplicate, pointed this out, and I think I agree, because this does sound a bit like a man who's sitting a lot, you know, and a man looking out to see inside, like, I don't know, a man looking out from a mirror, maybe? Could this be a poem from Frederick? And if it is, you know, I'll have to applaud him for his prose. You know, I'm pretty impressed, whoever did this, but if it's Frederick, man, he's an author. So, which brings me to the big news, because Frederick talked. He spoke to Jaran the duplicate. He told him that he had something important to say to us both. And now Frederick hasn't said a word in 16 years. And now that there are two of me, he starts talking. You know, I've been around enough scientists to think that there may be a connection. So Jaran the duplicate, because he's a duplicate of me, he came to fetch me as soon as Frederick asked for us, and we both ran down the halls of the Deep Earth Anomaly Department facility. We ran through the cafeteria to Frederick's favorite mirror. And first of all, Frederick didn't sit on his chair anymore. You know, he'd gone up and he was pacing back and forth like a madman. And I was wired up. I said, Frederick, you know, I've been looking forward to this day for such a long time. And he just held up a finger and he shushed me. Be quiet, he said. I have pictured his voice for years, but I would never have guessed how deep it was. So I said, I'm sorry, I said. But then he hushed me again. And this time Jaran, the duplicate, also looked at me. So I gave them both an apologetic nod, raised my hands, you know, sorry. And then Frederick said, we don't want them to hear us, he said. They mustn't know I have been talking to you. He sounded really strange. So I asked him why, and he said, shh. And he kept pacing back and forth before he suddenly stopped, and he sat down, he checked his watch. He's pretty old school, Frederick, you know. And then he looked at us both. So here's the deal, he said. After your annual subparticle reset, he said, you accidentally woke up the overseer, he said. The overseer, he said, has been sleeping for decades, and I've prayed he would never wake up, but now he has, and he is coming, he said. And Jaran the duplicate asked, you know, why are you so worried about the overseer? And Frederick didn't shush Jaran the duplicate, so I think that was only for me. Anyways, Frederick said that the overseer is not only hella strict, but that he is also a sociopathic sadist. That's why I'm worried about the overseer, he said. Now, I think calling somebody a sociopathic sadist is pretty strong. That's strong accusations, but, I've never met the overseer, so who am I to judge? It could be that he is just misunderstood. Perhaps once he had a bad day, and that is forever how he's gonna be remembered, And if that is the case, I feel a little bit sorry for him. But of course, I'm not naive, so I'll keep every option open. What's the overseer's name? I asked Frederick. Thomas Grind. Frederick was shivering as he said the name, and he told us to hide to the best of our ability. Bit strange. And after he told us that, Frederick just got this tired look on his face, and he said that I must go, he said. And then he told us to hide again, he said. And then he sat down in deep thoughts, going back to being Frederick. I hope he's not gonna sit there for 16 more years before he talks, because I should really need his help on the radio, I've seen his utility belt. And also the green door in the basement. Frederick got to know what's up with that. But still, he's just sitting there now. He's returned to being good old Frederick. And none of us have seen any signs of the overseers either, We didn't really put in an effort to hide, but, I've been here for 16 years and I've never felt unsafe, so I trust my gut on this one. And also, if Thomas Grind, the overseer, arrives, I'm sure he's a reasonable man, I think he will understand that we mean no harm, and I'm actually quite proud of my work as facility manager. And I think Thomas Grind will arrive to find the Deep Earth Anomaly Department in the best of conditions, I think I've done a pretty solid job. I'm proud of my job. Anyway, since then I've been going on with my nights as usual, because routines are good for the mind, and I've kept my mind like a pair of shiny dancing shoes. Which reminds me, speaking of dancing shoes, I caught Ingrid dancing again. And this time, I'm certain it was a dance and not a sweeping technique rehearsal, because she didn't hold the broom. She was just moving with the music, and I have no idea why she has decided to start dancing, but she did have some slick moves, Ingrid, I must say. Obviously though, same as last time, I won't tell her that I saw her, because I think dancing is a bit like quantum physics. It only works if nobody observes it, I just wish I could get the radio working. I'm starting to get a bit worried that the Norwegian government thinks that I am slacking off, which I'm not, Speaking of slacking off, tomorrow evening I'm going to attempt to get the antenna on the roof repositioned, because I was trying to do a scan of the green door in the basement with the Mastema 4000 quantum tunneling scanner, with no luck, I must add. But then, when I was conducting the scan, an idea struck me like a bolt of lightning. What if the radio is dead because the antenna on the roof is positioned the wrong way, from the blizzard? And I should have thought about it earlier, but there's just been so much stuff going on, and my mind is nothing like a supercomputer, to say the least. But I think I'm going to give it a whirl to see if I can reposition the antenna, and hopefully that can give some results with the radio. If not, I could always try to point it toward a satellite, or perhaps I could point it to one of the Spanish mining stations on the moon. Maybe they could reroute my signal back to Earth, or they could take a message and pass it on like a good old note in a classroom. I've got some contacts on the moon, so if they could do that, maybe the message could be traced back to me. And yeah. Well, speaking of traces, this is cool, because the same evening as we had our conversation with Frederick, I noticed something strange afterwards, because every once in a while I just have to go outside the main door, to breathe some fresh air. Not that the air inside isn't fresh, don't get me wrong, but nothing makes my lung rejoice like a good Arctic breeze. It's like a good pair of mittens when your hands are cold, you know. So when I stepped outside the main door, I noticed that leading up to the main door were footsteps. Barefoot, not bare footsteps, but feet, human feet without shoes on. Footsteps, you know, toes and all. So somebody walked without boots from as far as I could see all the way to the front door of this facility. It's a bit odd, isn't it? So I asked Jaran, the duplicate, if he had any visitors during the day when I was asleep, but he said no visitors, he said. And I thought about Joshua, perhaps the footprints were his, but he wouldn't come all this way without knocking. Or without boots, for that matter. Joshua is a reasonable boy who knows how to walk outside in harsh conditions. He's a true adventurer. So Jaran, the duplicate, said perhaps they were the footprints of Thomas Grind. Perhaps, I said, you know. But in that case, if it were, why didn't he come in? You know, all he had to do was knock. He didn't even have to knock. He could just come in. He's the overseer. You know, I'm sure he's got a good set of keys. So who knows? Who knows? Anyway, we'll probably find out soon enough. Maybe it was somebody out on a hike, thinking the facility was old and deserted and wanted to check it out, you know. I loved exploring abandoned buildings when I was younger, so I wouldn't blame them. I mean, it looks very old from the outside, which is an intriguing way for a building to look if you're into exploring abandoned buildings. And perhaps when they came up close to it, they noticed that there were people inside and they got spooked and turned around, you know. Who knows? On second thoughts, though, there were no traces leading away from the facility, which makes the mystery total. Because somebody walked up to the facility, didn't go in, as far as I know, but didn't walk back. You know, I'm not sure what's up. Perhaps I could ask the tiny entities if they could help me out. They seem rather good at investigating things, being intergalactic detectives and all. Anyways, whoever it was, I hope he or she or it knows that this is a friendly abode. All are welcome to the Deep Earth Anomaly Department. You know, we have coffee, we have board games, we have good vibes, and we have beds. You know, we even have a dancing robot. You know, only thing we're missing is powdered milk. If we had powdered milk, this would be a true paradise. So, whoever's out there, come on over. Let's hang out, you know. And on that chord, I think I'm gonna log off. I'm gonna turn my pillow around and tuck in for the day ahead. So yeah, this is Jaran, signing off from yet another cold shift.